Perfect. All right, so I'm super excited to be here with you. I've lectured on different health topics for a long time, and I always say, even if just one person shows up and I can make a difference in their life or a family member of theirs, then I accomplished my mission, right? Luckily, with social media and everything, we can record stuff, we can share it again later, and you'll have access to it so you can share it to maybe family members who may be interested in it as well. I just flew in from California last night, a rush trip to bury my grandparents who passed away. 72 years of marriage, died 72 days apart at the age of 94 years old. And I bring that up because at 94 years old, do you know what the average life expectancy in the United States is right now? 78, roughly. But it is going down. It is not going up. So the first time in history of the United States, life expectancy is declining instead of improving. And we're going to talk a couple of reasons of why that might be, but a big driver of this is cancer. If we talk about the top 2 health killers in the United States over the last 75 years, they have been cancer, number 1, heart disease, number 2, right? And it's not getting any better, not getting any better at all. And we'll talk about this more in a second, but the cancer rates in the United States right now is 1 in 2 for men. So 1 in every 2 men is expected to have a cancer diagnosis. 1 in 3 women is expected to have a cancer diagnosis in the United States in their lifetime, which should scare you. It scares me, and it scares it makes me fearful for all the women in my life, because breast cancer is a big growing cancer, and all the billions of dollars spent in genetic testing, turns out most of these cancers are not genetically driven. So what's left? The environment, right? So we're going to talk a lot about that. Back in 2008, when President Obama was in office, he was aware that cancer was one of the biggest killers of Americans in the United States. So he commissioned scientists to try to figure out why, try to answer why this was happening. So in 2009, they published their report called the Reducing Environmental Cancer Risk, What We Can Do Now, President's Cancer Panel. And basically what they discovered was that environmental risk factors were largely underestimated. They were a huge driver of cancer of Americans. Huge regulatory failures by the government to manage chemicals in food, toxins in the environment. GRAS, G-R-A-S, stands for toxins, or I should say chemicals, are generally recognized as safe unless proven otherwise, which means a company can create a product, have chemicals in there, and it will be allowed into the market in the United States until they can prove that it causes illness, cancer, or disease, which can take 10, 15, 20 years of it being on the market. And I'll give you a bunch of examples of that. Even then, the chemical companies fight it, publish their own research to dilute the other research, and now they're just fighting for years and years and years while we continue to consume it and cancer continues to grow. Back in 2008, they knew that the rising cancer rates, or the cancer rates were increasing. Fast forward now to 2025, I already told you what the rates of cancer are. They could not get any worse now. And they've known this already since 2009. Nothing has changed. Key problematic chemicals that they discovered in this report: asbestos, BPA, chromium, formaldehyde, mercury, perchloroethylene, phthalates, right? All these are found in personal care products, shampoos, makeups. BPA is found in different plastics. Mercury is found in vaccines, or was in vaccines for a long time, especially the flu vaccine. Formaldehyde found in, is a fire retardant in furniture, carpeting, things like that. And perchloroethylene found in dry cleaning solutions. So if you dry clean clothes, those chemicals, toxic byproducts, very toxic. Children are especially vulnerable. They call for stronger regulations and so on, right? So what I did here is I mostly pictures in different news articles from recent times. So here we have ABC 7 News, March 2025, rise in aggressive forms of cancer in younger adults, right? If you hadn't heard about this, this has been growing over the last 2 years. Cancer rates are not only terrible, but now they're discovering cancer rates in younger and younger people in their 30s, 40s. And I'm 38 now. We've gotten to the point where almost everybody's going to be affected by somebody in their life with cancer, either you personally or a loved one. I mentioned my grandparents passed at 94. My dad's 71. He's already diagnosed with cancer. My mom's sister is stage 4 ovarian cancer. It's already metastasized to her lungs. And just yesterday, that was in California, my mom mentioned her yearly mammogram showed a strange spot on it. And so here we go. 3 people in my immediate life already. And a buddy of mine who's my age, we have a birthday 1 week apart, so he's 38, just got diagnosed with thyroid cancer at 38. And he had to figure it out himself because he's a young, healthy guy. He exercises a lot, likes to run, was feeling a little sluggish, and tests didn't discover anything, right? The problem with these new aggressive younger cancers is that doctors don't screen young people for them because it's not expected. And so it was missed for a long time. And what he did was he paid out of pocket for a full body MRI scan. They're like $3,000. He paid for that and they discovered cancer in his thyroid. And so he had to advocate for himself to figure that out. And now he's going through treatment. Yale Medicine article here. I think this was from 2025 as well. What to know about rising rates of early cancer onset, right? Basically, it's the environment, which is what we're talking about today. Autoimmune diseases on the rise. Also out of Yale School of Medicine, 1 in 5 adults today is expected to get an autoimmune diagnosis. How about this one over here? Autism rates in the United States, right? This article from ABC News, autism rates have tripled. Is it becoming more common or are we just getting better at diagnosing it, right? If you listen to the mass media, they're going to say, well, we're just better at diagnosing it. But the rates have increased so fast and so dramatically that cannot explain increasing rates. Right now in the United States, rates are 1 in 36 kids, which is crazy. That should scare you. If the cancer one doesn't scare you and you're planning to have a family, the autism rate should scare you. This is a graph out of a study, Journal of Autism here. Basically, asking the question, is there a link between glyphosate, which is Roundup, pesticides sprayed on food and crops, and rates of autism? The yellow bars are basically rates of autism from 1990 to 2010. So you can see the dramatic increase. The red line is the amount of glyphosate that was sprayed on our food from the years 1990 to 2010. Look at see the link between those two? So pretty dramatic. Right. This is a study, you can see the title there, organophosphate pesticide exposure and neurodevelopmental in young Mexican American children. Basically another association, correlation between more pesticide use in the foods and neurodevelopmental delays. So how many toxins do we actually carry? This is a study out of Sutter Health. Well, Sutter Health published this, which is a big hospital conglomerate, kind of like Baylor Scott and White. I know they're on the West Coast. I don't know where else they are, but note that a study found greater than 100 toxins elevated per person and a total of 155, including a lot of the ones we talked about, heavy metals, pesticides, insecticides, plastics, etc. This is another study. This was done, I believe, in testing newborn umbilical cord blood. And they found over 200 toxins and chemicals in umbilical cord blood of these newly born babies. So even prenatally, they're already being exposed to toxins. All right, so chemicals in the environment. If we go through a quick history lesson here, I remember as a kid seeing the commercials on TV. Have you been diagnosed with mesothelioma, right? Which is a lung cancer, a lung tumor. Class action lawsuits all over the place. Asbestos was used on the market from the late 1800s all the way to 1980. So still pretty present in a lot of older buildings. The use of it is banned now, but can still be found in a lot of places. How about lead? Lead was before my time, but lead in paint was used from 1900 to 1978. This is a announcement just August 2025, so just this year, giving a deadline of August 2025 in New York, because apparently lead paint in New York and kids getting sick from it is very prevalent. And this is from the EPA website. The older the home, more likely it is to have lead in it. So you can see percentages there. Houses built all the way to 1977 there. Still a possibility that you're being exposed to lead. How about this one? Baby powder. Did you guys hear about this big class action lawsuit? Baby powder or talcum powder being linked to ovarian cancer. Product from the pharmaceutical company Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson also created one of the COVID vaccines, which got pulled from the market by the FDA, quietly pulled from the market from the FDA, because the risk of blood clots was significantly higher than the benefit of getting the vaccine in the first place. Right? So this is a big one. 129 years talcum powder was on the market being consumed by Americans. Now, this one was very important to me because my dad's cancer was lymphoma. And this class action lawsuit says leukemia, but they have another one just identical. It says lymphoma, if you've been diagnosed with lymphoma, and they're links to Roundup. Just last week, there's a big news article. A person in, I think it was Georgia, won a huge lawsuit against Roundup. They've been ordered to pay like $2 million to this guy for getting sick with cancer. And I remember as a kid, my dad spraying this in the backyard to kill the weeds. I know the smell of it. I know the taste of it, because when you spray it, it blows into the wind and it blows everywhere. And he refuses to stop using it. As much information as I share with him about this. The other day I was over at the house and I saw him, he was still using it. This, you spray it, it rains, washes into the gutters, washes into the main water systems. It's everywhere. This is the glyphosate, the link I just showed you, the image of autism and the use of glyphosate, right? This is that product. How about this? The depot shot for birth control, right? And this is out of Texas. Huge links with women getting injured with brain tumors from the depot shot for birth control. And this was published in a medical journal, British medical journal, 5 times more likely to develop meningiomas, type of brain tumors, than women not using depot shot. Right? So it's not only in the environment, it's in the medications that we are being given. Here's 2 other ones that keep popping up on my feed. I think the algorithm got me. Testicular cancer linked to PFAS chemicals in the water supply. So we'll talk a little bit more about PFAS chemicals, known as forever chemicals, but big links with testicular cancer. Dr. Mark Hyman, if you guys don't know who he is, he's a big functional medicine doctor, very outspoken, publishes great stuff. He, on his site, came out that tea bags releasing 11.6 billion microplastics because of the wrapper that the tea bag is put in. There's another doctor I follow, Dr. William Wallace, PhD. He's a researcher. New study shows 50% increase in brain microplastics. So this is the first time this has ever been seen in the history of medicine and in the United States, is actual plastic being found in the brain. I think by weight, 0.5% of the brain of these individuals was plastic-based, right? Individuals with dementia at the highest levels. So it is toxic. It's neurotoxic. So when we talk about the brain injury, recovery from brain injuries, environment plays a big role in that. Another paper here on plastics being found in heart disease patients. So in the arteries of heart disease patients, that plaque is filled with plastic and microplastics. Again, never seen before in medicine, in the history of medicine. All right, the PFAS chemicals, the forever chemicals that we spoke about. If you guys remember the plastic straws, switching to paper straws to save the turtles, right? I was all about saving the turtles. Then it turns out paper straws are even more toxic than the plastic ones, right? Because what happens when you wet paper? It falls apart, it disintegrates. So they have to spray it with chemicals to tolerate being wet for some time before it starts to like break apart. Filled with PFAS chemicals, paper straws. In addition to that, we look at all your paper cups that you get at Starbucks, coffee shops. Again, they're made from paper. If paper dissolves and breaks apart when it's wet, they have to line the inside with plastic and resin to prevent that from happening. That heated liquid in the cup breaks apart, gets into your liquid, you consume it, there's your forever chemicals, there's your plastics. Everywhere in our environment. So take your own cup to the coffee shop. BPA. So BPA is a big one in plastic. It's a chemical component of plastic. I put there, it's been on the market from 1960 to 2012, and I put question marks at 2012 because in 2012 there was enough research for the government to say, well, let's remove it from kids' bottles and toys, not from adult products, which makes no sense. It's toxic enough for kids, but for adults we'll allow them to keep consuming it. But there was so much bad press around it that what they did was they changed BPA to BPS, and they market it now as BPA free, which makes you think it's safer. But BPS, just again, needs to be proven with enough illness, disease, and research to be toxic enough for them to change it again, right? It looks like BPS is even more toxic than BPA, but it's going to take time for that research to be done, for the lobbyists and the chemical industry to fight within the researchers. So it'll be another 15, 20 years before they decide that BPS is too toxic to consume. But there's a lot of research showing BPA and its linked to breast cancer. One, either directly causing breast cancer, or two, making breast cancer worse after you have it. Okay. Girl Scout cookies. I'm sure everybody's heard about the Girl Scout cookie thing, right? I'll say this. I ran out of time. I read deeper into this, and the Girl Scouts didn't do anything wrong. Wherever they're sourcing their cookies from is just poor quality. But the Girl Scouts didn't do anything wrong. Technically, their food passes the FDA, USDA guidelines for toxic chemicals. But wherever they're sourcing it from is not great. And so like everything else, maybe the levels are safe to consume in Girl Scout cookies, but now you combine all the other exposures of toxins, and now you have multiple sources of toxin buildup in your body, and it leads to bad outcomes. Cancer, autoimmune diseases, brain degeneration. This is from the CDC talking about tap water. In general, tap water is clean until it's not, right? It talks about how tap water can get contaminated. In the cancer panel report I showed you at the very beginning, one of their recommendations was do not drink tap water. Despite it being clean, there are chemicals like forever chemicals, even pharmaceutical remnants in tap water that they do not filter out. So buying filtered water, having your own filter system in the home becomes a huge low-hanging fruit that you can do to prevent this exposure. Right? From the FDA, this was a new one just a couple weeks ago. Acne facial washes like Proactive and the other common ones, acne control face washes, found to have benzene, which is a toxic chemical linked to cancer in them. So they made a recall on that. Right. Again, from the CDC website. So this is in regards, this popped up with the big LA fires, but in general, wildfires anywhere. We had one in Fredericksburg not too long ago, right? That smoke in the air carries heavy metals, lead, mercury, formaldehyde. Smog especially has formaldehyde in it. We breathe that in, your toxic levels increase from that. Right? So we're surrounded by it in our air, in our water, in our food, in our care products, lotions, creams. So it is everywhere. All right, so this is a general summary of toxins to be aware of. A lot of ones we already talked about. Found everywhere, like I mentioned. I have in here mold, mycotoxins. I'm not going to get into too much depth with that because that's a whole another lecture to talk about. But toxic mold is everywhere, especially in Austin because of the weather, the humidity, the torrential rains that we get. I think something like 80% of homes in Austin have some sort of water damage in mold in them. Mold can be very toxic to certain people with a certain genetic makeup, and it can cause neurological issues. It can cause early dementia, early Alzheimer's progression. It can cause immune issues, a whole variety of things. I have a lot of experience with that. And there's a way to test for it, but conventional medicine doesn't recognize it as a condition. They never test for it. They don't treat it. They just ignore it, unfortunately. And they do the same thing with these toxic environmental exposures as well. All right, so hopefully I painted a picture there for you of how bad the situation can be. Let's talk about what we can do about it, right? It's not all doom and gloom. Oops. All right, so first thing, can we test for these chemicals in the body? We can. We can now. For a long time, these tests were only available for researchers and for research purposes. One of the good things about the advancements in technology is that now these tests are available to the consumer. So you can buy these tests and test your toxic load. I can order them for patients and we can see what their toxic burden is. This is done through urine. It's probably the most cost-effective way to do it right now. It can also be done in blood, but much more expensive. And basically, it gives us a indicator of what your immediate environment looks like, how well your body is potentially detoxifying and excreting these, or not, right? In your handouts with this slide, you can order these tests on your own through that link there. I'll talk more about that in a second. So that's the good thing. We can test for them now. For a long time, we were not able to. And so let's talk about once we do test. All right, my 5-minute timer. Once we do test, how do we get rid of it? So detoxification becomes very important. Now, what's super fascinating is in conventional medicine, or medicine just in general, the belief around detoxing is that you don't have to do it. It's not a thing. The body naturally detoxifies through the liver. And so if it's ever brought up in medicine, they say it's a scam. That's not entirely true. The body is supposed to detoxify, but we live in a new world surrounded by the amount of toxins that is unheard of. And so detoxifying requires vitamins, minerals, sweating, and decreasing your exposure to more chemicals. So you can't just rely on your body to detox. If that were the case, we wouldn't have an epidemic right now of new cancer diagnosis. So what are the 3 ways we detox? Poop, bowel movements, right? Urine, sweating. And that's sweating through either exercise, but a sauna is equally as effective. Even, I would argue, maybe even more effective. With the bowel movements tends to be the primary, but it's a little trickier than that. Toxins have to be pulled in through the liver. The liver has to break down that toxin, make it water soluble, and then it has to make it from water soluble to less toxic to make its way through the kidneys, through the intestines, and then out. All those steps require B vitamins, heavy dose of antioxidants, so your glutathione, your vitamin C, your N-acetylcysteine, alpha-lipoic acid, which are all available here as IVs, minerals, zinc, selenium, magnesium, and then fiber. So if you are nutrient depleted of these things, which is very easy to do with stress, with illness, not eating enough of it, you become depleted and your ability to detoxify declines, which means these toxins never get filtered out. They recirculate in the bloodstream and they accumulate in your tissues over and over and over again. I could give you a whole lecture on just gut health in general because most people have wrecked guts, right? If you have bloating, indigestion, reflux, constipation, diarrhea, which most people do, IBS, right? Your gut's not working well. likely that your detoxification pathways are not working well, right? Probably one of the most popular things I see patients for one-on-one is IBS gut dysfunction. They're just not detoxifying well, okay? And then the sweating, we talked about, pretty self-explanatory. Now, fiber I put in here, fiber works as a binder, meaning once the liver is able to break down through phase 1, 2, and 3 of making toxins water soluble, less toxic, dump it into the intestines, fiber grabs it and allows you to excrete it in a bowel movement, right? So getting enough fiber, vegetables, things like that become extremely important. All right. Perfect. This is a detailed explanation of the scientific version of how you detox through, you can see the primary organs, 1, 2, 3, intestines, liver, and then the colon. Everything we talked about. All right, how do we decrease our environmental exposure? Super easy. There's apps that will help you do this. Environmental Working Group, EWG. This is a resource I recommend you check out. They have a website. They also have an app. Yucca is the newer one I'm aware of. My wife loves this one. I think you pay 10 or 15 bucks for ever, I believe. And this allows you to scan barcodes of products. Scans the barcode and it'll give you a rating of how toxic or how clean the product is. Deodorants, foods, lotions, creams, sunblocks. Scan it, see what the score is. And it'll give you a list of the toxins in there as well. Super beneficial for evaluating your personal care products and your immediate environment. Okay? Environmental working groups, something similar. I think their user interface is a little more complicated than the Yucca one because you can easily just take a picture of the barcode and it pulls it up right away. Right? So these are invaluable resources. All right, so to wrap up here, for those of you that are here today, special offer, you can go to the website, you can check this out if you're interested in testing your toxin load. Normally these tests together about $1,500, okay? For those of you today, you can get it for $1,050, and it includes a sit down with me to review the results and talk about putting a plan together for you, okay? If you or someone, a loved one, is struggling with chronic health issues and you think this might be useful but you're not sure, I offer you a free 30-minute consultation. We can sit down and meet one-on-one. We can talk about what's going on. Maybe this isn't the best route to go. Maybe there's something else worth checking first before going down this rabbit hole, right? So take advantage of that. Share that with any family or friends that you might have that may benefit from that. And I'd be happy to offer it to them too. All right? Perfect. So we'll transition over to Patrice, and then we'll answer any questions.
Cancer Rehab. Oh, okay. Will do. I am the founder of Vibrant Living Lymphatics and Cancer Rehab. So I do see a lot of breast cancer clients because usually to treat the breast cancer, lymph nodes are removed, which can cause a condition called lymphedema and causes lymphatic dysfunction. But on top of that, anyone who goes through treatment of that sort, their lymphatic system usually is impaired. I'm also an occupational therapist, lymphedema therapist, Texas native, wife and dog mom, and then just a few little fun facts about me. So first, I want to make sure that we talk about what the lymphatic system is, ways to support it, what its role is in detox, and signs that it needs support, right? We'll also talk about manual lymphatic drainage and some things you can do for action. So we'll start with the basics. What is the lymphatic system? What does it do? So what most people don't know is you actually have 600 to 700 lymph nodes in your body, right? Nobody knows that there are that many. And a third of those are actually in your head and neck and in your intestine. So that makes sense talking about the liver, all those areas where it already does a lot of that detox. It's all tied together. It is your body's natural filtration system and regulates the fluid volume in the body. Okay, so what it does is it removes toxins and bacteria, cellular waste. It carries a lot of the proteins, water cells, and it is a thicker viscosity than blood. My way of like helping myself as I'm like doing lymphatic drainage is usually healthy lymph to me, kind of from what I can feel manually. It's more like mobilizing like oil in the body, right? Someone who has lymphedema, it's thicker. It's like a gel, I want to say. Obviously, you can't see it, but that's just what it feels like. It pits. People who have lymphedema, they get a lot of that pitting edema where you poke it and it stays for a while, or you wear compression socks, it doesn't go away. So that's just kind of a good visual for me. Also, I have a picture of the lymphatic system here with the cisterna chyli. That is the like big hub of lymph nodes that you have that's actually really close to your intestine and also tied in with your diaphragm, which we'll talk a little bit about later too, but just kind of keep that image in your head. So what is the lymphatic system's role in detox? That's our next question. So basically the simplified process is that it does collect waste from your tissues. It filters that through the lymph nodes, right? And then it returns that clean fluid back into the bloodstream. And it's right at your two ducts right here in your neck. That's usually if you have or ever get lymphatic drainage. If they're not starting up here, ain't doing it right. So I always tell people this is where your body filters it back into your body, but you have to open up those channels to send the fluid there. So what also people don't know is, unlike the circulatory system, the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump, right? The circulatory system, it has its way that it moves. The lymphatic system, it really is a pressurized system, right? That goes with the circulatory system, but it moves through movement, hydration, and manual techniques. It's not able to really, doesn't have elements in the body that really like push it to move like your circulatory system does, right? So whenever it gets unbalanced, what happens is, and that's usually through like surgery, through an injury sometimes, if you have lymphedema or cancer, right, it causes a backup. So I always explain it to people like traffic. So a healthy lymphatic system, it flows. It's like a good day. This morning, getting here, easy, right? When your lymphatic system has issues, you've had surgery, you've went through something, it looks like I-35 at around 5 o'clock. You have a backup. So when people have lymph nodes removed, it's like taking a lane out of I-35 in your body. That's what happens. You take a lymph node out. If you had an injury, a surgery where you've cut an area and you get scar tissue, it's like your I-35 has cones in the middle of it. It's also going to start a backup. So that's kind of the best image for me to help people explain why is this swelling happening. And usually there's something that's triggered it. So I wanted to talk through also some signs that your system needs support. So usually what this looks like is if you have swelling that comes and goes in the body, any chronic swelling that you may have after a surgery or injury. A lot of people too, after knee surgeries, women after they've had C-sections or a tummy tuck or any abdominal surgery, it can cause that backup in the stomach as well. Fluid retention in general, any fullness or heaviness in the area. People sometimes get little inklings of it. They're like, what? I just noticed this area, like it feels, I just don't understand. Sometimes that can be a trigger. You want to catch that early. And then if you do have bloating in your stomach, that's unrelated to anything you've eaten. And that can be, like I said, with people who have had abdominal surgeries or anything of that sort. So next, how do we support healthy lymphatic flow? So good lymphatic flow, proper detox, and overall wellness. Yes, so obviously hydration, drinking lots of water. You want to keep it, your lymphatic system loves water. So when you drink it, it helps it because like I said, that fluid is thicker, right? So it needs that water to help kind of loosen it, to help it flow. Even like Dr. Medina said, sweating, peeing, that's like the best thing. And that means your lymphatic system is doing well. Low impact exercise also helps, just stretching, keeping tissues from being too firm, having muscles that are too tight. You'll notice even people who have went through injuries and they stop using an extremity, usually what happens is they start getting a pooling of fluid because they're not mobilizing that tissue to help it get past that area. They have those cones on their I-35, like I like to say. And diaphragmatic breathing is such a powerful tool to help the lymphatic system. And the reason is, like I showed you that picture of the cisterna-chyli, when you take those really big tummy breaths, not chest breathing, but the stomach breaths, the diaphragm squeezes that cisterna-chyli and helps basically stimulate those lymph nodes, which get your system moving. So I tell people that's a really good one to do if you know that you have abdominal swelling of any sort. That's just a way to really keep it going. And you should really be doing that in general. We all are shallow breathers. It's not good. We need to be doing those belly breaths. So I say do it in the morning before you even get up. You're already laying down. That's the best way to do it. And then do it at the end of the day before bed. And I bet you'll fall asleep very nicely. Nutrition. That's definitely something that is Dr. Medina's wheelhouse. So definitely just looking at eliminating any inflammatory foods or things that may be toxic to your body. Dry brushing, that's been trendy, people doing that. That is something that helps just stimulate lymphatic flow. It's good if you're really active just to kind of start doing that because it helps with the skin, and the lymphatic system is closer to the surface of the body. So when you do that dry brushing, you're actually able to touch it, which is why manual lymphatic drainage is really powerful, because it's not a deep tissue massage, it's very surface level, because that system is closer to the skin surface. So also wanted to mention some of the services at Restore that can also help if you have a healthy lymphatic system. The services here are going to be amazing. The sauna, definitely going to do that, increase circulation, sweating to help to aid detox, the red light therapy, you've been seeing a lot of that reduces inflammation, and then the cryotherapy as well. People who do a lot, they end up hurting joints. You need to reduce that inflammation in your body, and cold is usually the best thing to do to help reduce that. I always write a caveat though, if you have chronic swelling or lymphedema, which they talk about too, or just venous insufficiency, this isn't the first thing to probably go to. It's really for people who, like, your system is already kind of doing what it needs to do. It needs a little support. So what is manual lymphatic drainage? I wanted to just take a minute to talk about that. So it is a specialized manual therapy technique. It's what you would see as lymphatic drainage or lymphatic massage. This is not the same as body contouring. So you see a lot of that on social media now, where you see people with wood tools and doing all this stuff and pushing people's stomachs really intensely. That's not what this is. Manual lymphatic drainage is helping to move that fluid, but it's not a quick fix. You're not going to leave and be like 10 pounds. I mean, you can lose weight, but you don't go to it to for aesthetics. It's for your system. So just making sure of that. But it does have a wave-like rhythmic pattern. And honestly, using that pressure, the stretching, the wave-like rhythm, that's what personalizes that manual lymphatic drainage. So every person that you go to will not be the same. That's how therapists kind of have like their personal touch to how they do the manual drainage. So the benefits of it, it does stimulate lymphatic flow in the body, reduces fluid retention, and it does have a diuretic effect. Usually I tell people, usually after you have a massage, 1 or 2, you are going to be peeing more than you ever have probably peed in your life. And it'll be a lot at once. Someone described it as like, it was like a racehorse. Like I could not believe that much was coming out of me. And because of that, you end up dropping some of that water weight. And I've had people say that they've checked their weight the next day and have lost 5 or 10 pounds just from like fluid. So it also helps mobilizing stagnant fluid. You don't want to leave that inflammation, and you don't want it just sitting in your body in that sort. That never has anything good that goes with it. And then just post-surgical recovery, lymphedema, and autoimmune conditions usually really benefit from it as well. So just to end, it's time to take action for better lymphatic health. And the services that I provide obviously are the manual lymphatic drainage. I am located inside of Dr. Medina's Wellness Center at For Healing. to provide these services for anyone who is interested. And for being here, you also will get an exclusive discount for your first visit, which is an evaluation, which you get 30 minutes of manual drainage, but you also get an evaluation where we talk through what some of the areas are. We go through your history. I take measurements. You get exercises and things that follow. It's a really comprehensive visit that you have, and then we schedule your treatment after. And you also, I have some dry brushes if you're interested. If you've never done it before, I always encourage people just to try it. So one on me so that you can do it for yourself and give it a go. So thank you so much for your time. And here is a QR code. It's also here. I have it on the flyer too. But yeah, thank you so much. And if you have questions, we'll address that too. Thank you.